Actually, we're going to go blank. Hello, everyone. We are going to sans the intro here. I made the call right here. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can follow us. You watch it on Facebook Live, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast. We are live here, sort of as what you call with the emergency podcast, but it happened, Joel? It would be at least 9 hours ago now. So Claude Julien and Kirk Muller have been fired by the Montreal Canadiens, replaced by I forget it. Alex Burrows is the assistant. I'm for some reason blanking.
Dominique Ducharme.
Dominique Ducharme. You know what? Because you know what? When the first name came out, I was like, "Is it David Desharnais?" That was who I was first thinking.
Double D. Yeah, double D.
Double D. This comes off of a great start for the Montreal Canadiens, as they got off to a great start. There were some high expectations, but 2 overtime losses in a row to the Ottawa Senators. I want to touch on last night's loss, which I know is not necessarily the reason that Claude Julien was fired, because I think that there's bigger things to this. So we're going to just recap that and kind of where do the Montreal Canadiens go from here. And quite frankly, from a Vancouver Canuck perspective, a very interesting decision who's been brought onto the staff that I think raise a little bit of eyebrows here in this end of the market as well. But Joel, it's always kind of fascinating. We talk about how the Vancouver Canuck market is fascinating. The Montreal Canadian market is always fascinating as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As you kind of touched on, obviously the big Vancouver connection there is being brought on as a assistant coach is Alex Burrows. Went up into the Ring of Honor last year for the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, he's a Quebec product himself, so he's wanted to get into some facet of either coaching or management after his time spent playing in the NHL. So it's a bit surprising. I mean, the move overall, yeah, I was floored when I saw it this morning, obviously. And as you said, I think that's not the only thing that is going to tie Vancouver into this. I think that the Habs basically moving off of Claude Julien, and you look at the record and where they are and how they've been doing and stuff, and you go, wow, if that guy, he's obviously not getting it done to the point where he's losing his job, then you think, even though, with Aquilini kind of tweeting out a vote of support for his management staff, that, Travis Green and other coaches that are just not having such a great year, they got to, they're looking behind their back at the next guy coming up as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, because this is the first firing in this pandemic bubble that you are wondering, and it was really funny, Joel. I was just thinking about this. Hot Take Hockey, John Viveros actually asked us who would get fired first, Jeff Ward or Claude Julien, and we all said Jeff Ward from the Flames was going to be the one that was gone. So, little bit of a surprise that it is Claude Julien. But what happened? Like, where did this all go wrong?
Well, like you said, I think that with this team kind of underperforming in the past couple weeks, really, they haven't really played a lot of really good hockey, I'd say. That the late loss to Ottawa last night was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I think if they would have got a win there, I don't necessarily think that we still wouldn't be talking about Julien getting fired this morning. I think it was probably in the works, just with how the team has kind of been playing, like in a shortened pandemic season, with so much expectation put on the Habs this year, with them making all the moves in the offseason, with Bergevin doing everything he can to keep his job as well. He's obviously feeling the pressure, and with them kind of laying an egg in the last couple of weeks, they can win a couple losses, another win, 3-4 losses. It's to me, like I said, I mean, I was pretty surprised that they did indeed decide to make the move off of Claude Julien, and Kurt Muller was, byproduct of that, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't, in terms of the Montreal Canadiens moving forward, I don't think it's something that's going to detriment them too bad. One thing that I found interesting is that in the last 12 years, there was 4 Stanley Cup champions who had their head coaches replaced mid-season. Now, for me, that's an interesting statistic because it gives a precedent. Like, obviously, everyone remembers short-term St. Louis, Mike Yeo got fired, Craig Berube came in mid-season, and they turned the ship around, went on to win the Stanley Cup. I believe it was Sutter in LA did it. Dan Bilesma and Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh did it. So, it can be done. Obviously, there's some track record there in terms of like, hey, things aren't working. Let's change it up. Let's try and do something different because we believe in this core that we have. We just feel like they aren't getting the kick in the butt or whatever it is that they need. But I'm quite honestly, I'm pretty surprised that they decided to move off of Julien at this point.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yes, and this is an interesting theme because you had the situation with Craig Berube, and you're right about the Mike Sullivan situation, and then also in Dallas last year, even though they did not win the cup, you went from Jim Montgomery to Rick Bowness, and in all 3 of those situations, the team was actually out of the playoffs and made a run. Now, I'm not saying that the Canadiens are not out of the playoffs here. They're sitting in 4th place, but I think the expectations were high, and I think the expectations were also high in St. Louis and Dallas as well. So there's a parallel there. To me, what's fascinating, I don't know if the Julien part is fascinating. It is as much fascinating that they decided to go away from Kirk Muller. He seemed to be if it was me. Other than the fact that I don't know how well he speaks French, he would seem to have been the heir apparent there. Am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, that's by all accounts from everything that I've heard from my friends and colleagues that follow Montreal closely there. I think you hit the nail on the head. They're just as surprised that the team moved off of Muller as they were the team moved off of Julien. But with the Axe, obviously they didn't like the way that they were handling the room, or I'm really not sure what happened there. But it's kind of surprising too, because Claude Julien isn't necessarily known as a player's coach. You know what I mean? And Kurt Muller was kind of the yin to that yang, where he was a little bit closer from all accounts. He was a little bit closer with the players and more of kind of a team guy in that sense. So for them to basically axe both of them, yeah, it's really kind of a surprising move. But obviously with Alex Burrows being hired right off the bat, like I said, I mean, I don't think the overtime loss last night to the Senators was, the deciding factor in terms of letting these two go. They obviously had Alex Burrows in the wings and were in discussions with him about potential coaching availabilities, I guess, should they come open. And obviously we saw this morning they did.
Yeah. And they did. Now, let's before I toss to some theories that I have about the coaching situation, let's look at a couple of situations within the Montreal Canadiens. Carey Price, we've always considered him the best goaltender in the world.
Yeah.
And he's not been this year. He's been inconsistent. He's got an under 900 save percentage, but Jake Allen has stepped in and has done a pretty admirable job.
Mm-hmm.
How much do we toss the blame? How much is the blame is this on Carey Price?
Well, I think that's a fair question, Kevin. I mean, obviously, if anybody's been paying attention to the North Division, which most anybody in Canada, that's pretty much all we've been watching since the season started.
I don't think there's other divisions. I think this is the only division in the National Hockey League.
The Dallas Stars? So what?
Tampa Brady's? Is it the Tampa Brady's?
That's right. But in terms of Carey Price, yeah, it doesn't take a lot to know that he obviously isn't playing his best hockey. He's getting paid an awful lot of money for the next number of seasons as well. And I don't know if, we're kind of seeing Carey start to be on the downslope in terms of like his productivity and how good he is, or if he's just in a funk right now. Because for me, like, I watch Carey play, and he'll make a number of nice saves where you're like, oh man, like he really did a good job there, or he was in position. What a phenomenal save. And then he'll turn around and let in a softie that just sneaks in under his arm or gets through the wickets 5-hole. And you're just kind of like, those are the ones you need to have. It seems like you're giving up goals that you should have while turning around and making saves that you have no business making. It's kind of deflating for a team to see goals go in that the goalie should have had, and then he turns around and makes a great save. Obviously, that's going to be a big deterrent and a big, emotional factor when you're in a close game and a softie goes in, and it's just, like, what do you do? Right. And you have to feel like, hey, we got the perennial best goalie in the world behind us. We can take a bunch of chances. And now with the defensive core and Carey playing the way he is, maybe they're starting to second guess that and say, maybe he's lost a step, or maybe he's sort of kind of behind or coming down on the downslope on the back end of his career. And you don't get so aggressive in terms of like moving the puck up the ice or defenseman jumping into the play, because that you have the goalie on the back end to make a big save when you need it, right? This is something the Canucks basically are learning this season as well, with Jacob Markstrom going to Calgary. Their identity last year, and a lot of people throw that word around, identity for a team. Their identity last year was, hey, let Quinn Hughes, let Myers, these kind of guys jump up in the play. And worst case, we have Jacob Markstrom on the back end to make a big save when you need. That's always kind of been Montreal's MO. They have a lot of good, strong puck-moving defensemen, but perhaps now, they'll kind of second guess it and have to kind of rework what they think would work. Getting the puck down breaking the puck up the ice.
The other thing that I'm hearing a lot of is the center ice position. I mean, obviously you're not going to get a McDavid. Matthews is a Matthews. There's Petey. Probably those are and Draisaitl, your four, and then Tavares. Those are the five best. Scheifele. You don't have that pure number one center, but you have two young pieces in Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who I think there's some Canadians that would wish that it was Canadian fans that wish that it was Brady Tkachuk that they drafted over Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Yeah, man, there's another parallel. You didn't take a Tkachuk. Suzuki got off to a great start, but he's tailed off a bit. Where are you at with the Canadiens' top two centermen and the center ice position overall, which includes Philip Deneau, which is another guy I really like.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing about the Habs right now up the center, Kevin, is there's not, outside of the top line there's not really a clear-cut number one guy. It seems like they're all kind of right at that same level where, with Kotkaniemi, obviously he's played in the league a few years now, but he's still got a lot of upside. Like, I really think he does. I think once, and maybe with a new head coach and a kind of a change in scenery there, perhaps he learns to round out his game a little bit more. And like you said, Philip Deneau, I think he's one of the most underrated guys. Like, you watch him, he is a dog on a bone when it comes to the puck. Like, tremendous player. And then you have Evans, and you have they're deep. But again, it's when you don't have necessarily a clear cut 1, 2, 3, 4, you just kind of put lines in a blender and see what works. It's almost like other teams that, Vancouver's one of them, that don't necessarily have a top line or a top 2 or a 3 or whatever. There's not necessarily numbers on the lines because a lot of times they're kind of you see players move in and move out all the time and given different numbers of ice times, right? So for Montreal, they're going to have to figure something out, obviously, because the scoring is kind of petered off a little bit, but not only that, you have to have, that chemistry, right? Where you have the centerman working with the wingers, to try and get the puck in the middle of the ice. And I think that's been a really big problem for the Habs as of late, is that their teams are doing a really good job of limiting their chances to the outside. And with Montreal having Josh Anderson and bringing in big bodies like that you want to sit their ass in front of the net and screen the goalie, when they're keeping you to the outside and you're not getting pucks into the middle where, a body like that can actually do something while screening the goalie, it makes it hard to put pucks in the net. And obviously we've seen that in the past week or two with the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Brendan Gallagher? This was a guy that signed a contract in the offseason, but in bubble he got benched, and there were trade rumors before with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it. I thought last night the goal should have counted. I thought he scored the winning goal with 2 seconds left. But again, I guess I don't understand goaltender interference.
Yeah, you, and everybody else that isn't an Ottawa Senators fan, Kevin.
Yeah. I don't think the Ottawa Senator fans understands what goaltender interference. I think that this is the new it's the new offside.
100%.
Yeah. But it feels like from outside of Montreal, this is a guy like 31 of 30 every team would want. Like, yeah, bring him to our team. If you don't want him, we'll take him. But what's going on there? Is there a fit there? Is there something we're missing, or what's going on?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kevin. To touch on the first point, yeah, I agree. I thought it was a goal as well. Even if, for me, I mean, like I said, I explained in the first podcast when I joined on, I'm a referee. I've been reffing hockey for better part of 15, almost 20 years now. For me, when a defenseman guides a player into the goalie, that's on him. If the player makes an extra move or goes out of the way to make contact with the goalie, yeah, okay, I'll give the goalie the benefit of the doubt kind of thing. But to me, that the contact itself looked incidental. He had a defenseman draped all over him when they both went down to the ice. Gallagher got plowed over by another defenseman shortly thereafter. After making that contact, Gallagher had enough time to get up, turn around, face the puck, and then tip it in. Same as the goaltender. The goaltender had plenty of time to get up, get set, find the puck, and make a save. Like, I counted last night 3.5 Mississippis between the time that the contact happened and the time the puck went in the net. For me, as a referee, that's plenty of time for the goaltender to get set, even if there was incidental contact. How the hell the Toronto War Room decided that contact was enough to pull back a goal, but not even that it was a short enough time between contact and the puck going in that the goal should be rescinded is beyond me. I mean, I just don't have an answer for that. Now, in terms of Brendan Gallagher, I would think that if you asked him how his season's going, I mean, I think he would be the first to tell you that obviously things haven't worked out exactly how he's wanted. But I also think it's a bit of trying to find that right, like I said, that right chemistry with line mates, right? Like, he's played mostly top line, which includes Drouin and that. But I mean, obviously something's got to give here. Like, when you have that kind of player who's tenacious and so works so hard in puck battles and in the corners, you got to set him up with the right guys on his line to succeed. And you don't want to see a really good player like Brendan Gallagher slip beyond the second line. And I certainly not saying I would put him there, but just finding perhaps other line mates or other combinations of teammates that'll kind of help put him in the right spots, right? Like, Gallagher has a very specific kind of skill set. And if you don't complement that with the right centerman and the right winger for him, it can kind of get lost in translation a little bit, right? And I think that you're right. In, probably 30 of the 31 NHL markets, they would love to take a player like Brendan Gallagher. Maybe the cap hit's a little higher than some teams might like, but he's still a productive player, right? And I think what's going to pay dividends for Brendan Gallagher is what he's going to do in the postseason. Now, you assume that the Montreal Canadiens are going to hang on here, even play 500 hockey, and limp into the postseason, worst case. hopefully they go on a run and things kind of return back to normal, and we see them as, perhaps the number 2 slot right behind Toronto in the North Division here. But Brendan Gallagher's value is going to be seen in the postseason, what he does. Because like you said, he was kind of absent last postseason. He didn't really get going very much. When he put in that one goal, and you could just see the stress come off him because he knew that he was on kind of a cold streak there. I don't think you're going to see that version of Brendan Gallagher going into this year's playoffs. I don't. I think that he's going to have a fire lit up under his ass where he's got something to prove this postseason, right? And even if things don't go necessarily well in the regular season, I think he's one of those guys that, when push comes to shove and they start getting into a postseason battle, he's going to be, Montreal's version of the honey badger that you want on the puck all the time, right? That perennial guy that can stir up shit and get the other team off their game and, irritate the goalie and be right up in his grill. So hopefully things turn around quick and we see a progression, not a regression for Gally.
Yeah. Let's look at the goal. I'm going to share my screen here. Give me a quick second as I found it. I just want to.
There you go.
There it is. Okay, we'll hit full screen here. That we're on mute. Oh, so this is. I'll play it again here. Like, okay, so yes, there, but he has time to reset. Clear time and reset. Like, to me, it's bizarre to me that was called there was contact. Nobody's disputing that the contact was there, but to me that had nothing to do with the goal. And and then Deneau scored after that. So that was a weird situation, but and Gallagher had every right to get off of that. And and it's just, I guess to me it's finding that line made in that combination for Brendan Gallagher, and maybe that guy isn't there that he can play with, but when he's on, he's one of those guys that he's one of the guys that you love to have for sure.
Absolute glue guy for sure. Just one of those guys that's a pest, but also really offensively talented, right?
Yeah.
And as you said, Kevin, like you can see there in the video, like he's kind of steered into the goalie. The only contact he makes is with the goalie's skate, where he basically turns the side of the goalie's skate sideways a little. Matt Murray has time to spin around, stand up, find the puck. Now, during that time, Brendan Gallagher gets buried by another Ottawa defenseman, has time to stand up, turn around, get his stick on the puck. Like, we're going to see it here again. Like, right here at the beginning of the play, you can see their skates come together. Brendan Gallagher and Matt Murray's skates come together. And that's what pulls Matt Murray to the side, right? And, like, he's getting steered into him by Tierney. Like, you can tell. The incidental contact itself isn't like, it's not like he plows the goalie over. He's completely, ran him, and then the goalie has to stand up and try and make a save. That's not what happened here. And then you have the other player come and bury him. Matt Murray's in a position even right there. And this is before Gallagher even gets up and puts a stick on the puck to tap it in. Matt Murray's in a position to save the puck here. Here he is up on his feet.
Yeah.
And there it is in. Like, to me, that's just garbage. Like, I just, maybe I'm a homer because I am a Habs fan at heart, right? But, I mean, if I were watching that goal and I were a fan of any other team and it happened to any other team, I don't think I would be saying any different.
That's fair. I'm not cheering for the Habs, and I thought it was a goal. So, that's the way I'm looking at that there.
But that's basically, Toronto, the NHL war room in Toronto deciding a hockey game one more time, right? Which sucks. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to have, objectivity kind of taken away, and somebody that isn't on the ice, whether it be a referee or the teams, decide a game. That sucks. If there were fans there, I'm sure they'd be booing, right? Like, nobody wants to see that, and it's unfortunate. And the comments made by Brendan Gallagher after the game, where he's saying, we don't know what it is anymore. We have no idea what goaltender interference. We were shown plenty of examples in the preseason saying, this exact play right here is not goaltender interference. This should be called a good goal. And then they take it away from us. And we see plenty of examples of guys running into goalies and they're saying, yes, that's goaltender interference. We're going to take those calls away. And then they call it a goal. We have no idea what it is anymore. So how are we supposed to plan for it, essentially, right? And I can't blame them. I was pretty surprised that I didn't see, a presser release today saying that Brendan Gallagher had been fined by the NHL because he was pretty harsh in his criticism on that call, particularly last night.
Yeah, I found the quote here. Just give me a quick second. Here we go. I get knocked on my ass. I'll maybe just extend this up here. I get knocked on my ass. I have time to reset. You can't tell me the goalie doesn't have time to reset. That's basically in a nutshell what that was. Yeah, he was hot, and I think if it wasn't for Julian's firing, probably we would be talking more about that. That would be the top story in hockey today for sure.
I agree.
Yeah. Now let's look ahead here. We've got the interims in, but the fascinating questions are who's out there. You've got Gerard Gallant out there. You've got I'm saying he's out there as a fact. I'm not recommending him in any way, shape, or form. You've got Mike Babcock out there. You've got a few other.
How did
people.
I know you were going to say Babcock there?
Oh, I've got to rant a little later about Babcock and the fact that he's getting puff pieces. Anyway, you've got some names out there that people are like that, and even in Calgary, they're like, what about this guy? What about this guy? Do they stick with this group that they have for the rest of the season, or do you think there's a plan to bring in a Gerard Gallant? The name Michel Therrien is also out there.
Well, I mean, you know how Montreal likes to wind it back and do things over with their head coaches. Obviously, it's Julien's second stint with the club and being let go. But myself, Kevin, no, I personally, I wouldn't. I wouldn't bring in anybody else. I would give the reins to Ducharme and let him, take the team into the playoffs and out of the regular season and see what they can do with him. Obviously, he's one of the guys that he joined the team in 2018, so they've had an eye on him for a while. Now he has experience coaching some of these players because he coached for the Halifax Mooseheads while Jonathan Drouin was on the team and Nathan McKinnon as well. So he has a little bit of a rapport already set up with these players. I would expect that the Montreal management team would give them the regular season. And especially during a COVID year, because you don't know, like, look at the situation with Dubois coming into Winnipeg, right? Like, if you bring someone from the United States or someone from out of country or whatever that isn't chilling here in Canada ready to go, they're going to have to wait. And you might name him, and the coach can only access the players over Zoom or what have you, and he doesn't really get to meet his, coaching staff and really kind of imprint what he wants to do for a good 2-3 weeks, even after the hiring, right? Which in this kind of shortened season, that might be the window you're looking for the coach like that to make that kind of difference, right? So to me, it wouldn't make sense that they would bring in someone else to kind of take over the reins of the interim status given to Ducharme. But, crazier things have happened, I suppose.
Is this also... I do understand Gallant is in Canada, but he still would have to isolate before he went into that. So you're still looking at that. And the other side of this too is an interesting year for the offseason for coaches, because you've got Travis Green that's not on a contract. You've got Rick Tocchet that's not on a contract. And I don't to me, if he's coming back to Arizona, that would be a stunner to me. You've also got Rod Brindamore that's without a contract. You've got Tortorella without a contract. So you've got at least 4 there. And you've got, I guess, your other names there as well. Is it, is it the Montreal Canadiens getting a head start on starting a coaching search and rebuilding an identity? And also and there's Bruce Boudreau as well, who does speak French. Well, obviously speaks French. That might be another option as well.
Is, one of the prerequisites to being a head coach in Montreal, apparently. But
yeah,
that's a conversation for another podcast, anyways.
Exactly, sure. But is that an option? that going down, you're thinking, what about getting one of the five? Because only one of them can coach in Seattle.
Well, you would think, right? Whether it be, like one of the coaches that you mentioned before, like a Rick Tocchet or a Brind'Amour, a Travis Green, one of those head coaches that, are UFAs essentially, right? Now, yeah, I could see them kind of looking at those guys, but I just don't see it happening before the off season. But that being said, there's a lot of interesting choices out there. There's a lot of fits in terms of head coaches that I feel would really work well with this team, where the styles kind of match up, what they're looking to do with their offense, with their defense. They would really kind of match up well with Montreal, but right now, two of them are under contract with other NHL clubs, right? So I guess at this point it would kind of be a pipe dream, but would I be surprised if in the offseason, if a head coach moves off of whatever situation that they're unhappy with and sees the mecca that is Montreal and the opportunities there with, their good young core? Yeah, I definitely could see that happening. Montreal's an attractive place to coach, whether you speak French or not. I mean, I think it's there's obviously some kind of, we'll say je ne sais quoi when it comes to working for the Habs organization, right? Like winning his franchise in NHL history. And there's a lot of, that comes with it. But, in this offseason, if they decide not to keep Ducharme on and remove that interim tag, I think it is an attractive destination for a lot of free agent coaches. It's not like Montreal's going through a rebuild right now, or it's not like they're really struggling to kind of, find their identity or shake things up or what have you. Like, I think we know what this squad is. I think we know what they're capable of. I think they know what their identity was. And they just, they have to find it, and finding a head coach to do that. Yeah. That would definitely be something for Bergevin's to-do list in the summertime for sure.
And the last thing from my perspective, how hot is the seat of Bergevin now?
Well, if it wasn't before, right? I mean, to me, if they're moving off of a head coach and an assistant coach, that usually, for me, ticks the box on a vote of confidence for the management staff in terms of the GM or the club president, right? Because you're saying, okay, I believe in the product on the ice. I believe in the players, and I believe that, we made enough moves to get there. I just don't think that coach is getting enough out of the players. To me, that's what firing a head coach does. I mean, if we would have seen this morning that Bergevin and Julien were let go, like, that's saying something totally different. That's saying we don't believe in the guys on the ice. We don't believe that this team is going where we think it's going to go or has the capability of going there. It's built wrong. We're just going to cut bait and just start fresh. I don't think that's the move the Canadiens made this morning. So we'll see, moving forward. But yeah, I mean, if Montreal continues to drop off a cliff and they, miss the postseason, or, things go really bad and then yeah, this summer I could absolutely see them moving off of Marc Bergevin. Obviously the hot seat is getting hotter in that, they are sliding a little bit, but like I said, making a move like this, it's obviously, there's an implication there that, hey, we don't think this is on the GM. We believe his moves. We just think that the coaching wasn't getting it done for our players.
Yeah. Fair. Anything else we need to speak about in regards to the Canadiens?
Well, I think that for Dominique Ducharme, he's been, an assistant coach all over, and a head coach. He's had lots of opportunities. I think that he is an interesting fit to take over the head coaching position. Obviously, he's, very familiar with not only the players, but the management staff as well. He's Bergevin's guy, right? And we're seeing when more and more across the NHL, when a general manager has been put into place and there's a head coach that was there before, or he brings in a head coach and it's just not the right fit, it's not the right feel, and they move off him. A lot of times, and especially during the season, like I said, I don't know why it seems to work, especially in the last couple of years, but changing things up midstream in terms of getting a coach that'll fit with what the GM had planned in terms of like how the team's going to execute on the ice, that is a big, huge plus. Now, I think the Montreal Canadiens in the past 2 weeks, they've severely underperformed. I think everybody knows that. They just haven't had, things going their way. A little bit of bad bounces here and there. Obviously, they could have won the game before the overtime there, and maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation today. But in terms of turning things around, I really hope that this can be the spark that some of the players in that dressing room need to light a fire up under their ass and really get this team turned around and make a deep playoff run. Because we had a brief talk in the preseason before it started, and I picked Montreal to finish number 3 in the division. Now, obviously, that's looking pretty good. I'm not going to talk about who I predicted to finish number 1, because that's a conversation for a different podcast there. But with that being said, I really think this team has the capability of being the team that makes it into the Final Four, that being the Kings of the North, if you will. Montreal matches up well against Toronto, and even though they haven't shown it always this season, for me, it's like those are, 1 and 1A in terms of who I think are going to be moving on. Now, with this head coaching change, like, hopefully it's the spark that, a team like this needs. Like, it's a deep team. It's a quality hockey team. They got 2 really good goaltenders. If Carey Price starts playing a little bit better and starts to find his groove instead of declining a little bit that we've seen, I think this team is capable of going on a long run, if not, making it to I think this team's capable of making the Stanley Cup final. I think they're capable of winning the Stanley Cup. I think it's deep enough. I think their defensemen are deep enough. Their goalie tandem in net, all the way down the center, the wings, everything. Like, they're a young, scrappy team. They got hard, chiseled veterans, and I like the chemistry of the team. It sucks that, the last 2 weeks have gone the way it is, and ultimately it leads to Claude Julien and Kirk getting fired this morning. But, hopefully Ducharme and Alex Burrows coming in will turn this thing around, and we'll see a more complete Montreal Canadiens moving forward, wanting to, play an inspired level of hockey for the new head coach.
Fair. Yeah. And, with the Leafs, we'll see. I'm not, are they the best team? Yes. Are they due for a little bit of a slide? Also, yes. And they've got a lot of injuries. I mean, everyone in Toronto is Austin Matthews, 50 goals and 56. Like, I don't think that's
not happening.
I don't think it's happening.
Let me put water on that fire right now. That is not happening. Like, I don't know if we're ever going to see 50 goals in 50 games ever again in the NHL. I don't. Like, I can't see where a guy is going to score, even if you're on a record pace and you hit the 50 goal mark or whatever. Like, there's no way that they're going to be able to be that productive in the NHL, not unless you take away goalie pads, make them smaller, make the nets bigger, or some kind of scoring gimmick like that. Is Austin Matthews a terrific goal scorer? Absolutely. Is he in the premier, like, top 2, top 3 in the league? Absolutely. But, if you're asking me if I would take Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid, I would laugh at you all the way to the Connor McDavid bank.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with you on that. And they're injured. They've got a lot of injuries right now too. So I think that there's a bit of a slide there. Just quickly going through everyone else. I mean, Edmonton, they're playing very well right now. I will give them credit. I mean, they're getting goals from other sources other than McDavid, but is that sustainable? I think we'll have to see. Winnipeg is an interesting case. I think they're getting better goaltending from Brossoit than Hellebuck, and that's fascinating. You've got Calgary that is inconsistent, and Vancouver, we're going to talk to Bick Nazar and Jamie Dodd a little bit later about where the Vancouver Canucks are at and what's going on there. So we'll see. It's certainly fascinating.
It's been interesting producing Canuck Central on Sportsnet 650 with Bick and Jamie across the past couple weeks, because it's, one day, and I'm not saying them specifically, but like a lot of the texters and callers into the show, one day we get a win and it's okay. They're turning the thing around. A lot of lines rolling. We're going to see them get back here and hopefully turn this thing around. And then you have a loss like we did last night there for the Canucks. And it's just like, oh my God, like, we're a dumpster fire of a team. We got to start looking at the draft, and, we're going to start calling this Prospect Central, not Canuck Central, because it's, kind of in a rebuild. But I agree with you, Kevin. I think Winnipeg is a better hockey club than I thought they were at the start of the season. And I think Vancouver,
and people were laughing at me, and I picked them to finish second.
I was probably one of those people, to be honest. I think I picked Winnipeg to finish 6th out of 7 teams. And, I think that Vancouver has severely underperformed, right? I think the other teams, like I said, I think Toronto obviously is, for me, they're going to be the kings of the regular season. Now, Toronto doesn't obviously have a lot of, for me, they don't hold a lot of postseason cluth. With them trying to do anything at all in the playoffs, I just don't trust them. Even though they have all that, high-end offensive talent, they're really lacking on the back end. And that's kind of where I feel Edmonton is in that same kind of boat. They have a lot of really good pieces up front that can put the puck in the net. And sometimes if you're able to score 4+ goals every single night, hey, you can win the hockey game. That's fine. We can give up 4 if we score 5, right? And I think that's Edmonton and Toronto's game plan a lot of the time is like, we're going to give up chances. We're going to trade chances. But, hey, we got, a couple of the best players in the world on each of these teams, and we feel good about those chances. Now, obviously, with Markstrom going down, and there's a bit of toe-to-so on that one when you're looking at it through the lens of a Canucks fan. You're just waiting until Tanev gets hurt as well, because it's perennially that those two guys get hurt every single year. But that's unfortunate for them, because Markstrom was playing on his head. He was playing damn near MVP caliber level for that hockey club, right? And when you got, Riddick's a good backup, but he's not Jacob Markstrom. He's not going to absolutely steal you points and steal you games like he did for the Canucks last season if he's hurt, right? And then you got to wonder what he's going to be like when he bounces back from that injury. And the Canucks, after the loss last night, like, I think, it pains me to say it, but like, I don't think that's a playoff team anymore. I just don't. Like, we got out to and I tweeted about this last night, the second game they got out, or third game they got out to a 2-0 lead. And you're like, okay, like, good start. They had a good one. McEwen beat the hell off of Forbort the other day.
Yep.
And, they got a 2-0 lead. Oh, great start. And even last night got off to a 3-0 lead. And you're like, okay, maybe they are turning around. Maybe they have figured something out. And they blew every single one of them. And it's just, what do you do, right? With how they finished last year and the steps that they took in the postseason, knocking off St. Louis, taking Vegas to 7 games, knocking off the Minnesota Wild, you really thought, oh, okay, maybe their cup contention, maybe their time to shine is now. Maybe the window really has opened. But I guess me and a lot of people are figuring out now that maybe they just overperformed a lot in last season's Stanley Cup playoffs. Maybe it was kind of a fluke or a flash in the pan with how well they did versus all those teams, because you're seeing, them falling back down to earth now. It's interesting, man. Like, when we had this conversation before the season started, we were saying, here's what we all predict, and every single person has something different, right? It's not like a clear cut, oh, okay, here's where we think it's all going to end up. Right now, you look at the standings, and I don't think anybody can say that you had the standings exactly how they are right now, right? Like, I don't know anybody
other than Toronto and Ottawa. I think most people are Toronto first and Ottawa.
Well, 7. Yeah, I'm talking about everywhere in between.
Yeah,
for the most part. But But yeah, it's an interesting season, man. Like it's been a lot of fun to watch, whether or not you're quote unquote the team you're rooting for or whatever is doing good or not. It's been a ton of fun, right? It's a one-off, obviously. We're hopefully, COVID's going to be rescinded by the time next season rolls around, and we're going to have, the typical Pacific Division, the Metropolitan Division, all those back. But it's been fun watching, paying attention more so to all the Canadian teams and kind of forgetting about our counterparts to the south there a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dig into them. But we'll leave it here. We've got the Flames and the Leafs recapping. After that, we're going to do that on the midweek. And then, as mentioned, Bic Nazar, Jamie Dodd, Canucks Central at noon will be Canucks Central at dinner in the evening. I don't know how we'll figure out some wording, but we'll talk about that. We'll dig into the Canucks. Joel, how do we follow you? Thanks for doing this in the last minute, by the way. What time did I get a hold of you? 8 o'clock or something?
Yeah, something like that. It's just one of my few and far off days off from Sportsnet 650, actually. So you can follow me on Twitter. It's my handle there at the bottom, Joel Gaudet Radio. And that's basically where you'll see all my ridiculous hot takes on what I think is going on in the game of hockey.
Fair enough. I'm KVOLE, Beardy Canuck 03, Gordhouse 09, Schneids, T-Noble, podcast _hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Join us a little bit later or check out the video later as we recap the Flames, Leafs, and Bic Nazar and Jamie Dodd from Canuck Central. We will talk to you all real soon. Bye for now.